Okay, so we could talk about this. This could be our. We should do a Valentine's Day
Who
theme.
cares about the news? This is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Twin
Have this
Valentine's edition.
prepared, and we'll talk about my very reliable and successful dating strategies.
Now, before anybody logs off, we were just kidding. We will get to the news.
As the cold winds of winter sweep in, there's nothing like the warmth of a comforting cup to help you slow down and unwind. This is the season. Let Postum be your cozy companion. Made from roasted grains, Postum is caffeine-free and rich with a smooth roasted flavor. It's the perfect drink for those quiet, chilly mornings. Whether you're curled up with a good book, sharing a laugh with loved ones, or simply watching the snow fall outside, a cup of Postum is the moment you have been waiting for.
Hey, folks, welcome to This Week in Mormons. I got my brother from another mother, my favorite single adult in the church, Jeff. Is it Gaser? How do I only read your last name. How do you say it?
it's Gosser.
Gosser. Okay.
Now all the world will know, and nobody has an excuse to get it wrong anymore.
That's right. So all those lucky ladies out there who want to practice their signature with your last name, there you go. Now you just told me before I record, we're recording this on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, and you had a date tonight, a first date on Valentine's Day. Man,
Yes, happy Valentine's Day.
clue us in. Like what? How does that go? Where'd this date come for? Did you swipe on this date?
Yeah, definitely a mutual outing. That's
Okay.
my go-to.
Has there
And
been much chatting before, like online, or maybe
no,
a
my
phone call, or?
nope. My
Ooh.
process is I get straight to it. I don't really like to, you
Are
know.
you temple worthy? And do you was the Book of Mormon historical or not? I want to know because
Yeah, those are the questions I ask on the date itself.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then but before that, you can get really like caught up in texting, and people sometimes don't respond for a while, and it's just kind of a big waste of time, like texting back and forth. And so
Okay.
yeah,
So what's your strategy? How do you get to it via text? Like, how do you cut through the fat?
okay, so we could talk about this. This could be our. We should do a Valentine's Day
Who cares
theme.
about the news? This is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Twin
Have this
Valentine's edition.
prepared, and we'll talk about my very reliable and successful dating strategies.
Now, before anybody logs off, we were just kidding. We will get to the news, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about this.
You don't want to hear this from a single 37-year-old guy, but that's okay. So so basically, my understanding is that I think that in the mutual app, like most guys will start with kind of like I've heard from my girlfriends, like, hey, what's up, like really really generic openers,
Okay.
or maybe like cringy. Well, for me at least, it would be cringy, like overly cheesy pickup lines or something. Um, Now, I'm not like the most clever, like smoothest, suave guy when it comes
That
to,
shocks me.
yeah.
Jeff, that shocks me. Okay.
Um, so I'll usually just like start, if there's something interesting in their profile, I'll just start with a question, just about, just try and come up with, and I have a couple of like go-to questions, something that I know will like catch their attention. And then and that actually does pretty good.
So what
And
did you ask this girl who you're going out with tonight? What was the question
I
you
don't
went
think
to?
I can disclose that information.
Okay.
That might be too
People love it, Jeff.
embarrassing.
People love this kind of stuff when they're
I have to look it up. Let's see here. She seems like a really nice girl, and we probably sent each other a handful of text messages. Oh,
uh-huh.
okay. We actually talked quite a bit. Let's see here. Oh, she was wearing this isn't that interesting, so you guys can judge me, okay? Um
That's what we're here
He was
for, Jeff.
wearing a SpongeBob SquarePants shirt.
Oh boy, she's out, Jeff. Just call her right now. Cancel it. This is
And
over.
so I asked her, I was like, "Are you a SpongeBob SquarePants fan?"
Okay. I love it.
Not that clever, but you know, then she says, "I was never able to get," oh, probably shouldn't be sharing this, but
No, go ahead, Jeff. No,
let me
really.
just-
This will be so good on your wedding video someday when you marry her. So
So anyway, she was just like, oh no, I wasn't really into it. It's just a cute shirt. And then I'm like, and then I basically asked her like, oh, like, did you watch any cartoons growing up? You know?
nice.
So just kind
Perfect
of coming
segue.
up with like interesting conversation that goes on for a while. And then I basically just cut it off and I'm just like, hey, let's just like meet up. Like we don't need to talk anymore.
We don't need to talk cartoons anymore.
I'm
We're done
done.
with
I'm
SquarePants.
done. Let's meet up. And so anyway, that's what we're doing today. So
Oh, cool.
it is a first date, and again, keeping it simple. We're just gonna go get some like Mexican food,
Love
and
it.
usually try and go to restaurants that I haven't been to yet. So
Okay.
it's a
So probably not the Red Iguana. You've probably been there already.
I have been to Red Iguana, yes.
That's my like restaurant when somebody comes from out of town and it's like, I want to give them like some good,
Yeah,
authentic like taste of Salt Lake City. Man, Red Iguana every time.
that's
Every
actually
time.
yeah, that is a solid choice. I'll give you another one.
Okay.
The Garage on Beck.
Really?
Yeah, have you been there?
Okay. Now there's the Garage Restaurant. There's a few locations, but its own thing?
It's kind of like yeah, I think so. It's kind of like a bar, live music,
Oh, okay.
Western
All
atmosphere.
right. All right.
And the food is not like spectacular. I mean, it's good food. It's not bad, but it's more about like the ambiance. So it's like a good place to go and people are visiting and stuff. And it feels very kind of like Western Utah, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Has the Western Utah vibe. Love it. Love it. Well, that's great. Anything going down with your calling?
Yeah. So actually it was a little bit related to there was a news piece this week um about Lifting Hands International. It wasn't really like news, but there was an article just talking about, I guess, Lifting Hands International, and they're like this organization that's putting together hygiene kits and doing like various things, charitable activities and stuff. And I actually just got called as the service coordinator in my elders quorum,
Perfect. Love
and
it.
um, and it's actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of anybody doing this before, but basically my elders quorum president was like, hey, you're basically just a fourth, no, a third counselor,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because he's like, I'm going to give you all of the like serve, like anything that's tangentially related to service in the elders
Like
quorum.
temple cleaning assignments, canning assignments, right?
Yes, exactly. And like and also like cleaning the church, which I guess
Oh, yeah, yeah.
falls, so, and then if somebody needs help moving or whatever, but then also I really want to do like community service projects, something that I took away from my time in DC. I was in the DC second ward, which is like, in my opinion, is like a legendary singles ward.
Oh, really?
And in DC, it's, along with like the colonial wards and stuff. And I don't know if they're still around now, but it was just amazing people, amazing experiences. But we had such an awesome service committee. And I've always like felt like, okay, if I ever get called to a service calling, like I need to like incorporate the service committee,
Yeah.
the stuff that they did in DC second ward. So um
So you're kind of getting a chance to do that now.
yeah. And so what I would like to do is I would like to sort of find a local organization and develop a relationship with them.
Hmm.
Instead of doing like kind of one-off service projects through like Just Serve, which is still great and everything. But I would love to be able to like develop like a good relationship with somebody like in our very local community and see if we can just kind of like be there for them, you know?
Oh, I love it.
But anyway, I did find this service project with Lifting Hands International, and we did a hygiene kit collection for victims of the California wildfires.
Perfect. Love it.
And I gotta tell you, like, so I live in Sandy. My ward is skews very old. Um, at least for me, it's not what I'm used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I'm in a family ward now, right? I
Right.
just moved over this
Yeah. And
year,
everybody's praying for you and everybody has a niece or a granddaughter or something, right? Mm.
and and they're so generous, so generous. I mean, we like without hardly any effort, we got 130 hygiene kits, which is like there's like 7 items in each kit. So that's like 800 items out of this ward,
Well,
in
that's cool.
just a couple of weeks. And so it was like really cool to just see how generous people were and how like willing they were to help and everything.
Yeah. I got to do that. I'm serving as the Elders Quorum president right now, and I'm thinking, yeah, we got to get like just that service muscle going, right? And just have perpetual opportunities to show up
Yeah.
to a service assignment, because I think we do kind of default to the, the once a year canning assignment, or when the temple, we just went through, temple cleaning, and they have you show up like 10 o'clock at night to go
Yeah.
clean the temple, right? And and Just Serve's tricky. I think Just Serve's an awesome tool, like outside of Utah, where wards are more spread out geographically, and so you can go to the town food bank, and like they're your point of contact, or you're their point of contact for the church, right? Where wards are so condensed that it's like, well, I guess there's that, but then I don't know. I haven't been overly excited about Just Serve opportunities in Utah. I'm probably,
Mm.
I don't know what it is, but maybe I've got the wrong point of view with it all, but for sure, like I love the idea of like reaching out to a specific, organization and saying, "Hey, we're your group, man. What do you need? We'll be here every
Yeah.
week or once a month, and then it's not this constant, struggle to find somewhere to serve, So
Right. Exactly.
that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, any other dates lined up, or is this is it, huh?
No, this is it right now. This is it right now.
Well, Jeff, I mean, this is exciting. This is your last first date. I
I'm
can't
trying
believe
not
it.
to tell you
I
like
mean,
everything about it because it'll.
we're totally ruining it. Like,
I'm
okay,
very, I'm very like mechanical about it. I'm like, okay, well, I try and keep like um, I'm going to tell you anyway, like probably about 3 or 4 people going on,
okay,
just to
okay,
make
that's
sure.
like, yeah,
If you go less, and online dating often does not work out,
yeah.
right?
Suddenly you're 47 and still single.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like relationship whiplash. You
yeah,
get ghosted all the time, and so it's good to have like a couple people kind of you know um there so that when you're back to square one, it's like not totally soul crushing.
yeah.
Um,
Now
but
I don't know how these dating apps work, but if somebody's listening and they're like, "Hey, I'm in my mid 30s and this Jeff guy sounds good," can they go to the mutual and like type your name in and actually look you up and then swipe, or does it not
no,
work
that
like
would
that?
be interesting. No, but they
But they
can
can
slide.
find you on Facebook or
Yeah,
something.
they can slide into my DMs.
Hey, oh man,
At Jeff Fosser. There it
that'd be
is.
so cool if Twim was responsible for an eternal marriage. That would be our dream. That's our prayer.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody pray for Jeff. Well, we want updates on this, all right? And I don't know, you got to at least mention that you co-host a podcast once a month, and not that you talked about it. I don't know, just like bring it up, see how she responds to, "Ooh, you're a
Yeah.
podcaster." I don't know. I've been out of the dating game too long, Jeff. So you do you, but
I've been in it too long. Got opposite problems.
hey, the water's warm over here. Jump on in, my friend. So, should we get to some news, my friend?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, dude. Big news this week just dropped. I think today dropped. President Nelson posted on social media that we got dates for the Salt Lake Temple open house. So I think construction's to a point where they're like, we're smooth sailing. I mean, right now we're just doing the trimmings and the knocking out this wall or whatever. Like, but we can be on schedule and confidently say when we're going to do it. So he said on February 14th, 1853, talk about a throwback, a groundbreaking ceremony in Salt Lake City began a 40-year journey of faith and sacrifice, culminating in the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple in 1893. A current and comprehensive renovation to strengthen this sacred house of the Lord for future generations is now nearing completion. Today, exactly 172 years after the groundbreaking ceremony, I am delighted to announce that the temple will reopen for tours during a public open house from April to October of 2027. So we're 2 years out, my friend. We warmly invite our friends to come and learn about God's plan for his children and rejoice in the love of Jesus Christ. Details about the event will be shared in the April 2027 as April 2027 approaches, as the house of the Lord now doth, as the houses of the Lord now dot the earth, I invite you to cherish your time and service at the temple closest to you as we prepare for the reopening of the Salt Lake Temple in 2027. Jeff, how many people would you guess are actually going to go through the open house for Salt Lake?
Let's see. What were the months that he gave from
So we got 6
April?
months. We got a 6 months window that people
How
can
long does it
fly to
usually
town.
go for?
Usually, I mean, it depends on the area. I think more like outside of Utah, it can be like a 2-3 week period where they do the open house.
Because
I
I
think
went to
in
the one.
Utah, they usually give like at least 2 months, I want to say.
Yeah, I went to the one in Manti, and I remember wasn't the one in Manti was like very limited. They didn't have a lot of
Yeah,
dates.
I remember. I think there was a reason for that. Maybe they were rushing it or something. But yeah, it was like, and the lines were. I didn't end up going, but I hear the lines were long, and it took a while to took
I
several
actually,
hours to
I
get in.
was there, and we stood in line for like 4 or 5 hours or something like that. It
Dang.
was kind of crazy. It was worth it
Yeah,
though. It was really
yeah,
cool. Um, yeah, so 6 months of open house. That's a long
right.
time. So
Yeah,
they're anticipating a lot
yeah.
of people coming to visit.
I'm gonna guess anywhere from 6 to 7 million people. All right, that's how many people are going to check
Sounds like
this
a
out.
very good guess to me.
I mean,
Six
that's.
to
I mean,
7 million. Yeah.
for being such a historic building where nobody can get into unless other than this 6 month window.
Right.
I remember taking a art history class at Utah Valley State College, now UVU, and the professor said something about like the Salt Lake Temple being the most. What was it? The most. Oh, it's not the most photographed building. I think that's the Apple Store in New York, but like the most like studied building in North America or something. I don't know, something strange like that. Where like as far as in the art history world, it really is a landmark. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Uh, it's going to draw some people for sure. Any other thoughts here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm excited. Like, I was really bummed when I moved here to Utah because I moved to Salt Lake, and I think I caught it right when the temple was closed for renovations, and I was in the temple district,
Mm,
and um, so yeah, I'm super excited about it opening back up. I wish they were still doing live sessions.
yeah,
Um, that
for
would be,
sure.
but
We got to move on at some point, right? I
just
don't
do it.
know. I
You
don't know.
should
I don't
just
think
do
we
it like
do, but I
a
guess
month or something.
yeah.
Just
And
keep the
and is
tradition alive.
now and Manti's done with live sessions too, right?
Yeah, because they had screens and stuff like
Oh
in
yeah,
the rooms.
yeah.
So anyway,
Well, that was an era for sure.
yeah, I'll have a little more to say about that a little later. But
Okay, all right, and I'll slide this in. I came across. I just saw. There's I think the church news on X was like announcing or highlighting quick stories, and they mentioned President Nelson talking about the open house, and then there was a story about an elder Bednar talks about that we should call temples the house of the Lord. I'm like, whoa, what? When did this happen? And I go to the link, and it was like it looks like it was in a Latin country. I think it was being translated into Spanish, and he was making this emphasis, Elder Bednar, that we should not call temples temples, but we should call them houses of the Lord. Now, I don't think not like Mormon, where we're like completely trying to avoid it at all costs, other than low performing podcasts. But nonetheless, we to have this more emphasis, and to me, it's sort of a foreshadowing. I think because many people statistically, Elder Bednar will most likely be President Bednar at one point, and Elder Nelson, decades before his call, had this heavy emphasis on calling the church by its official name, and now as a prophet, it becomes more of a thing. So I just wonder if this will be more and more of a thing as we try and call temples houses of the Lord to emphasize, obviously,
I
the
know,
Lord. So, anyways,
yeah, I saw it, and I actually, I understand what he's saying. I did groan a little bit on the inside.
well, that's the thing.
I don't
Like,
think I'm gonna do it.
um, I don't know. This is the tricky thing with I think like general leaders attempting to impact culture, where it has to be really rigid to have an impact, right? Like President Nelson couldn't give like just 5 talks about why we want Christ as the focus of our church, and suddenly it shifts that culture. But if he comes with sort of a mandate saying, no, this is the program now, we're not using Mormon, we're calling it by the full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and everybody's like, oh, okay, we'll get on board. And so, but it is tricky because it kind of feels like, I don't, I sure hope we're not correcting everybody in the future of like, oh, no, don't say temple,
Right.
and Elder Bednar emphasized there's nothing wrong with calling it temple. It's just more emphasis on the Lord himself. But anyways,
Yeah, and I take that as it's a good point, and it's something maybe to keep in mind. Yeah, when you're like giving a talk in church or something, or maybe sharing like a spiritual thought, you know, maybe like in family home evening or something, like trying to use that. I can see that, like using that terminology more, but in casual conversation, I think it comes off as it's just a little like, you know, it's almost, it's out of context almost, like
yeah.
it's a little so.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll get to a place where we're calling, like, even in President Nelson's release or his statement here, he calls it the Salt Lake Temple, right? I don't think we'll get to a place where like,
Right.
oh,
I
I'm
don't
headed
think
to the Mount Timpanogos house of the Lord.
yeah.
That would be a little awkward. But then near the end, he does say, "As houses of the Lord now dot the earth," right? So there's sort of this emphasis there, but he's not like going all in on this
Right.
term. So that's probably what we'll see. Where do you want to go next?
Okay, so well, did you watch the Super Bowl?
Oh, I was busy reading my scriptures. No, yes, of course I did. I did. It's a family event. This is really, do you think there's been a shift with the Super Bowl lately? Like in our culture? Like it's definitely more of, I remember years ago being in a temple ceiling of all places. And for whatever reason, as the sealer gives a message, he just got on the Super Bowl soapbox
During a ceiling?
during a ceiling, like giving advice to the bride and groom about,
Whoa.
I think he was going after like, having our priorities straight and making, God an emphasis in our relationship and things like that. But I was just sitting there, like getting lectured about how you should never watch the Super Bowl. But now it seems like a shift where you'll even hear it mentioned a little more passively, maybe more casually at church, or, people are less afraid to talk about it. I don't know. Maybe that's just my perspective. But yes, I did watch the Super Bowl, and watch Brother Reed almost win, but I was kind of rooting for the Eagles. So,
You were rooting for the Eagles.
oh,
Why is that?
just the Chiefs are the new Patriots. It's sort of always the underdog. I like them both. I would have loved to see Andy Reid get his three-peat, but
Yeah.
it was cool to see a new era of champions. So,
Yeah. So it's not really like in my blood to like follow sports. So
uh-huh.
I'm always looking for but I like cheering for a team. And the Super Bowl is like basically the one sporting event that I actually like look forward to
Yeah,
every year. And it's mostly for the food,
yeah,
like
great
just
food.
basically like a holiday.
Uh-huh.
Um and and so this year I was very like excited to have a team to root for because I knew that Andy Reid was is a member,
Yeah,
and so that I was like, okay, I'm gonna root for the guy, with the member of the church leading the team and everything, because basically when I was a kid, like that's the only reason I like the 49ers, and I
mhm.
imagine most like
That
Mormon.
was the LDS team of the '80s
Yeah,
and '90s
exactly.
because of Steve Young, right?
And
Like,
I'm very happy to continue to follow that, trend. So it was difficult to watch. It was definitely a very difficult game to
yeah,
watch. But what I didn't realize was that the offensive coordinator on the Saints was
no, on
also
the Eagles, right?
oh, sorry, on the Eagles. Yeah,
Right, because
on the
he's now a
Eagles.
saint, right?
Right.
In more ways than one. So,
Yeah. And so first of all, I didn't realize that he was on the Eagles team. And that's good because then I really wouldn't have known who to root for. Um, but um, anyway, so the piece of news is that his name is Kellen Moore, and he was announced to be the New Orleans Saints new head coach. So you got a Latter Day Saint, who is the head coach of the Saints, which is I think very ironic and kind of pleasant. Um,
yeah.
he's also 36 years old, which seems extremely young to me.
Right? He's even married,
Is
Jeff.
that
Can you
young?
believe?
That's young for it. I know. Is that young for a head coach? That's
Yeah,
got to
I'd
be
say
young,
so.
right?
I mean, I think there's some others. I forget their names, but like the Rams head coach was quite young. I think when he
Uh,
was was first hired. The 49ers coach, I think, was quite young. But yeah, definitely he's been an up and coming coach for a while. And so to get a spot like that, he was the head or the starting quarterback at Boise State back in the day, and then didn't get drafted, signed with the Lions, played with the Cowboys, and then was just not built for the pros. So then he started coaching, and obviously he had a knack for it. So, and there's, where did I read it? Because obviously Taysom Hill is on the Saints, right? And
okay.
so maybe they'll be in the same ward. I don't know. But and then
Yeah.
there's one more. I thought I had his name written down here, but there's one more guy who. Um, anyways, there's another Latter Day Saint. So there'll
There was
be,
another connection.
yeah. So, but cool to see. I mean, there's more. I guess Latter Day Saints are popping up in all sorts of industries, but I think in a football platform is always cool. So we got one more team to root for, and the
Yeah.
Saints, even with Taysom Hill. I literally named my son after Taysom Hill. Uh, I'm that guy. Yep, I'm that guy. But
Oh, wow.
I would love I'd love to see the Saints get a Super Bowl and on now for one more reason. So
Okay. So are you like a Saints fan then? Are you like rooting for the Saints and stuff? Or
not necessarily. So the way that I'm a big BYU fan, right? Season ticket holder my whole life. I even graduated from the University of Utah,
oh,
but was still a closeted BYU fan. And then when my wife was pregnant with our son, we were having a hard time coming up with names. So I started going down the roster of BYU, and I said Taysom. She had no idea who Taysom Hill was. She's like, "Oh, I love that name," and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm gonna be the guy." At least I don't have a Jimmer. I think that was a little bit much, but
right.
um, so yeah. And then I actually interviewed Taysom Hill on the podcast, and my Taysom came with me. And it was funny. Taysom Hill drove up, gets out of his truck, and comes up to my son. He's like, "Hey, what's your name?" And he said, Taysom. He's like, yeah, but what's your name? I'm like, no. His name is Taysom. Anyways, so, but
That's
yeah, so I'd love to, and Taysom's had such an awesome career. It's been cool to see. I haven't necessarily become like a bandwagon Saints fan, but it's been cool to see the success that Taysom Hill's had. And hopefully with this coach, it just, accelerates and, Kellen Moore and Taysom Hill will maybe bring another reason to turn on the Super Bowl or another excuse, right? That we need to
well,
turn on the
yeah.
Super Bowl.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you what. Like they've got my. I feel like football fans would probably be so annoyed by this, but they've got my vote now. Like
All right,
they
you're
have
you're
my allegiance.
officially
Yeah.
Jeff is officially a Saints fan.
A Latter Day Saint leading the Saints. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
rooting for them now. Um, yeah, because that's basically the only criteria I put on my
of
fan.
all things, you only hire people
Whoever
like
has
contractors who
more,
show you their temple recommend and say,
yeah.
"I just want you to know we've got a serious investment here, Jeff. This is my temple recommend." Definitely lean in. So cool. Anything else about the Saints or football or Super Bowl or Kellen Moore or bless his heart?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Should we go on to the next
Let's
one?
go on to the next. Another big story this week is the church again continues to release new hymns. They've released 15 new hymns, and one of them, I think there's a few that kind of were surprising, but one specifically is "This Little Light of Mine," which is, I don't know how they call it, but a African hymn. It says it in the notes. It's an African song, right? And
Yeah,
so I don't know if this is a song that there are various songs that came from the period with slaves and things that often slaves would
right.
sing. I don't know if this is one of them, but really powerful song.
Yeah, I always kind of had the impression that it was kind of like a gospel music
Yeah.
uh, hymn or whatever. And so, yeah, that sounds awesome. I would love to sing that in
And
church.
is it possible to sing it without clapping a little bit? You get the
Right?
sway going, you get the clap going. I mean, if you choose this as like the ward choir hymn, come on, little swaying,
Oh,
a little
they've got
clapping.
to do they've got to bring that little extra to it
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Now, with these new hymns, I've noticed I was going through them online. Like you can set it to hear the vocals, and some of the vocals are sung by children. This is one of them that's sung by a child because I think they've combined the children's hymn book and the hymn book as we roll out these new hymns. So some are more maybe geared towards children. So I wonder if this is one we'll hear more often in primary or in a primary program. But man, I think let's just bust down sacrament meeting and roll with it, So
Yeah, totally.
so anything else with hymns?
I don't think so. I don't really, honestly, I didn't recognize any of the other ones.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of feel like Jeff Openshaw should be on the episode for this because he was always so enthusiastic.
Right. More the music guy, right? Well, again, this is my request. I'm putting out there. If anybody's listening, as they add 15 hymns, they should cut 15 hymns. And again, I know that's like a practical problem. You can't just rip pages out of the hymn book, but I don't know. I feel like we just need to slowly ease into suddenly we have this new hymn book as we have added more and taken some away. But
Hmm.
anyways, because it does seem like there are like people wards are still singing the traditional hymns, right? Which is fine. But even with the new hymns, there's obviously favorites coming out. I think by the time there's still some hymns of like I never heard of that hymn, and well, probably never will. We'll just move on. Yeah.
Let's go with the. We can get into a little bit of politics here.
Ooh, your favorite topic, right?
Yeah, I got a couple of stories
Let's hear it.
in the political realm. So, leaders of Mormon Women for Ethical Government, also known as MWEG,
Wag.
um, MWEG, MWEG, gathered at the Utah Capitol for training. Um, their organization wants to help women take a more active role in all levels of government. And so they had this meeting at the state capitol. The organization was established in 2016, and they had like fewer than a dozen members, and they've grown to thousands of members around the nation, including in Utah. So I included this one just because I think it's pretty cool. Like I'm always for like people getting, civically engaged, kind of like what I was saying with the Super Bowl stuff. I like to see members of the church in public settings and sort of living out their faith. Um, in the public square. And so I think it's really cool to have an organization that focuses on Mormon women getting more involved. But I do have to say that like it would be nice to have this just Mormons for Ethical Government or something, because I would love an organization that, like teaches you, like if I wanted to get involved in politics, I'd have no idea where to start. And
Yeah, well,
so
Jeff, that's called the Republican Party. I'm confused here. Why do we need to be redundant? This is oh come on, give us a comment on the video. Come on, just reply to that. That was a crazy statement, but go ahead. But yes,
well, they do claim to be, and they probably are a nonpartisan organization.
right.
So
And
yes.
I do cheer this organization on, Mormon Women for Ethical Government. I'm glad they're doing what they do, and I've heard some remarkable stories about just everyday uh, ladies in the church or in our faith tradition who've figured out how to step up, and they're on school boards or city councils and above, that really engage them there. I don't know, when I go to their social media, I know I'm a radical. Okay, I'm a radical. It doesn't often seem totally partisan or nonpartisan. Okay, so
Right.
that's just my opinion, but that's probably more me than them. But
Well,
anyways,
at the end of the day, a lot of these organizations, they have to be nonpartisan in order to be a
right,
501c3,
yeah,
so
and they needed to fund the mission, right?
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that they lean more to the left, but they probably make efforts to reach out to the
I
other
think so.
side as well. But that's just sometimes in like nonprofits, that's just kind of like how it happens. You just kind of the people who lead them have political views, and it's just like it kind of naturally runs through the organization.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, Brian Johnson. You ever heard of this guy?
No,
Okay.
no, I have
So
not.
he is the focus of a Netflix documentary called "Don't Die," I believe. And this guy made his bazillions through financial services online, something like that. And now it's basically rich people hobbies where you you spare no cost at vitamins or therapies or injections to keep you young. And this guy, who's a former Latter-day Saint, he kind of talks about this through this documentary. Now, I fell into the wormhole here, Jeff. I did not expect to watch this whole thing, but I was just working at my desk. I turned it on, and as you may know, in the Netflix app, you can speed it up. So I watched it at 1.5 speed that kept it moving, and got through it. And it was interesting. It wasn't there was actually a lot of references to the church in the documentary about his early life, and he was just a very committed Latter-day Saint, all in, did all the things. But that led to some depression. Of course, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose these things, but it almost sounded very similar to maybe some scrupulosity he was dealing with of really trying to be uber perfect. And I think some of that scrupulosity spilled over to his current life because he has a lot of critics online as far as what he's doing. But anyways, he left the church, divorces his wife. He was estranged from his kids and parents for a while, and then one of his sons moved in with them, and that's the focus of the documentary. But anyways, just these crazy therapies that he does, this online movement, this Don't Die movement. They do hikes, and he's got products, and that's where the accusations come that maybe he's just trying to profit off of these things. Um, but uh, but then there's like this reference, he mentions it in this article. It says Richard, Johnson's father, says that as a child, his son really wanted to be like Mormon leader Joseph Smith. He's clearly obsessed with leaving a high impact legacy regardless of the way. It just so happens that investing millions of dollars into an extension of his life and becoming an influencer of sorts along the way is the method that stuck. My goal here isn't to make the argument, though. It's impossible that the documentary just did a really good job convincing me of Johnson's innocence, but I think it goes deeper than that. The argument that Johnson is trying to become God implies this idea that he's trying to gain power over the world so that he can exercise control over the pace of aging and nature itself. So,
Wow.
really eccentric guy. I don't know if I'd recommend the documentary. I mean, if you got nothing to watch, maybe give it a go. But yeah, it's been a lot of work. I hope that Hollywood thanks the Latter-day Saint community for single-handedly carrying media on our back from all the different documentaries and Hulu series that we're the only reason they're staying in business. But
Yeah, it's nice to have a documentary that's not about like some violent,
yeah,
person.
it's about a crazy person instead. This
Yeah.
is wonderful who wants to be God. So, but yeah,
That is interesting. I was going to ask it was there any, what was the LDS sort of
yeah.
psychological connection? And do you think that would be it? Kind of like the preoccupation with eternal life or something?
Yeah, that seemed to be what they're alluding to, and mainly, I think it just shows that he was in this rigid, faith community, and then kind of got out of that, and now he's doing all these things. So I think it was pretty fair. Like they weren't trying to demonize him while also showing a lot of the criticism online. But yeah, I was surprised. It's not like a ton of the interview, but it does show pictures of going to church, and he looked completely different compared to how he does now, where you know he's
Oh
lost
yeah.
a lot of weight and obviously takes care of his body maybe a bit too much. But
Yeah, yeah.
so
He does look a little bit mannequin-y, I
yeah,
think.
he almost looks like he's The Walking Dead. I mean, obviously very fit. He's got the abs. He's obviously exercising, but very pale, and his hair kind of doesn't look right. I don't know. Bless his
Yeah,
heart. I'm glad he's found a passion in life that keeps him going. But
interesting.
so
All
all right.
right, moving on. So, okay, so this isn't really like news, but I did want to just get a word in on the immigration
Oh boy, he's
thing.
gonna go there,
Here we go.
folks.
This is my soapbox.
Perfect.
Um, so the church, we talked about a couple weeks ago. The church released some guidelines, which actually I could not find the very specific guidelines for bishops
Hmm.
on how to deal with immigrants, people who may or may not be here illegally, how to deal with those situations, what kind of aid to give them, and all that type of stuff. But this is just such an interesting and difficult topic theologically, and in the statement that the church released, they gave, sort of three general, sort of like almost like um, uh, guidelines or talking points, or sort of like a vision for how they're
Mhm.
approaching the situation. And the first is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints obeys the law. And the second is we follow Jesus Christ by loving our neighbors. And,
Mhm.
neighbor includes all of God's children. And then we seek to provide basic food and clothing as our capacity allows to those in need, regardless of their immigration status. But it's interesting that they left out housing of
Mhm.
that list, right? And I think that kind of goes into some of their guidelines. But the thing that kind of like a little bit like bothers me with this statement is that it's I've always found the church's adherence to like the laws of the land as very kind of like interesting, and kind of coming out of our articles of faith, which were
Mhm.
very inspired by a specific point in history and what the church was going through,
Hmm.
you know, with in that period of time. And I feel like, around the world, there's so many people who are living under, let's just be honest, evil and oppressive governments, that
Mhm.
this idea of like a church member obeys the law can only take you so far, right? And I think that a lot of people who would be pro sort of like, um, well, let's say anti deportation,
Mhm.
would say this is a time for civil disobedience, right? And so, one, I've always felt like the church is lacking a little bit in their discussion around civil disobedience. Like, I
Hmm.
do think that civil disobedience is, can like I can't think of like any scriptural examples of civil disobedience, but I'm sure that there are.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess Moses, fleeing
Yeah.
from the Pharaoh is a example of civil disobedience, basically.
And there's a lot of, I would say, Joseph Smith, or early church
Oh yeah,
civil disobedience, right?
yeah.
Uh,
And so, but then, so but the other thing I just wanted to comment on here is that, but I also think that people on the sort of anti-deportation side do shortchange people on the, I don't know how you like, I guess on the right,
mhm.
a little bit when they say that they're not being charitable or whatever, because you
Yeah.
should always love your neighbor. And the reason for that is I think that what people on the right are seeing, if you could sort of say it scripturally or
Mhm.
theologically, is render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's,
Yeah.
right? And unto God that which is God. And I think that the church can have sort of like a um a view of saying render unto Caesar, meaning obey the laws of the land. And that is something that Jesus Christ himself said. So you could see sort of an argument for that. And so the next question is, are our like immigration laws, are they unjust? Are they worthy of our civil disobedience?
Mhm.
Right. And if they are unjust, then you can say, okay, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, but like in this case, Caesar is corrupt and unjust, and so we can disobey him,
Yeah.
right?
We're gonna tip some tables as Christ did, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of where that's just like the part of this discussion that I haven't heard. I listened to the Mormon Land podcast about this topic, and I just kind of wanted to like bring it up because I'm very much like a middle of the road, middle ground type person, and I just
Yeah.
think that like both sides, there are two competing like theological sort of points of view here, and I think that, it would be good if, I don't know. I just want to talk about it, I guess.
So what you're saying is that you kind of feel like the church articulated more clearly, like where to draw the line, maybe because we're sort of talking these platitudes, right? As far as like, yeah, like love your neighbor and like follow the laws and okay, like good luck everyone, and we're like, well, wait a minute, like these are like we're on ground zero here. Like we're really this is real life to some people, and I don't know how to apply what you're saying because this brother, and this is the really with several issues, right? The church will have a statement, and it's a little unclear, and so one side of the aisle or the one side of the opinion or interprets it very appealing like well obviously the church agrees with me and then the other side is like no well obviously the church agrees with us and so then we really burrow into our opinions and it's like, no, this is, I'm on God's side here because obviously the church stayed this, right? And this is, I think I mentioned this before, like back in the 70s or 60s and 70s, where like, Elder Ezra Taft Benson and Elder Hugh B. Brown would like get up in conference and really kind of give this provocative talk either about the Constitution or civil rights. And it was kind of created some tension, which I think was uncomfortable for the church as an institution, but also like at least you knew where they stood, right? At least you saw like the debate unfolding in a way that's like, oh, I see his point and his point, where now it's kind of this more general message coming from the church, right? And that's sort of that's where you're at with that tension of like, well, I
Yeah.
mean, give us more, like, tell us more, like, what does this actually look like?
Yeah, well, I will say that I actually think that the order that they put their 3 points in, should be reversed. I think it should be loving for others first and then obeying the law.
Hmm.
But I guess, yeah, my point is that I think that there are theological like justifications for like um both sides, and I
Yeah.
think people just need to be comfortable with like tension and
Right.
paradox, because we run into that all the time in the gospel. But I will say this, even though I do think that, I think that um like expecting people to obey the law, I think is something that's important to recognize.
Hmm.
At the same time, I myself, because one of the questions that they were asking on the Mormon Line podcast was, should a member of the church report somebody to ICE? Would that be a charitable thing to do?
Hmm.
And I don't, or not a charitable thing. Would that be like a Christ-like thing to do? Right. And I, I will say this, like, I don't think I could do it, you know,
Yeah.
like, so there's, if even for me, I'm like, I think that the deportations to some extent are justified because I think people should obey the law and we need to hold
Hmm.
people accountable. But at the same time, I don't think I could find it in my heart to like report someone who's illegal.
Yeah. So, well, going back to as far as the order of those points, I think generally as an institution, the church is more afraid of the government than they are maybe culture or the people.
Right.
So it's like, let's be clear, like, hey, just so you know, we're starting with the law. Like we want to do the law. Um, I did listen to that Mormon Land podcast as well. It was a while ago. I don't remember all the details, but I guess it's the framing. That's what kind of drives me crazy with the Salt Lake Tribune and others, where the framing is completely off. Where, like, in my opinion, I mean, if you, I don't know, does ICE have a phone number? Like, can you really report people? And in my opinion, especially right now, if you called ICE or sent an email or reported someone, they'd be like, we're busy here. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
so what? Your good neighbor who, yeah, happens to not have any, legalization of being here. Like, we're not going to then like. It's not like they're waiting around for that phone call to jump in the trunk and go get them, right? Yeah, I'm
Right.
also seeing this with, the Trump administration. I think removed like the ICE uh, can go into a church and what's the other one like? Oh, a school, right?
Yeah.
And detain somebody. And now people like the problem is then like people like the Salt Lake Tribune and others, they take that framing to the extreme measure of like ICE is like kicking down doors in church and walking into a sacrament meeting and dragging, the dad out to detain him. And I'm like, okay, like, first of all, that's just not happening. And I don't think, but if there is I think from the Trump administration and that side of things, why they put that in place is like, if you have an obvious rapist in the sacrament meeting or in the cathedral or whatever, and he's hiding out there knowing that they can't get him there,
Hmm.
yeah, go into the church and get the guy and get him out of there. Like, to me, they're more focused on those really the terrible, violent criminals and things. And so, but then when we create this framing of like, isn't it terrible that the government can do that? Wait, the government's not doing that right now. I'll
Yeah.
stand corrected if you send me a story or give me an example. And so, to me, the framing is just off, right? To me, it's like, well, yeah, I would, and I served my mission in Sacramento. I was a Spanish speaking elder. Like that's all. That's all I baptized were undocumented immigrants, right? Like, and many of those missionaries I served around. I think of Elder Carbajal, who was here. He did not have, he was not legal in the country. And that's why he got sent to Sacramento, because if you're in the country and go on a mission, they will send you within, they're not going to send you out of the country because then you can't get back in. Right. And so to me, I'm fine with that. And I'm not going to report anybody, but to me, it's like, even if I could, like, even if I had a dark soul and I just don't think ICE cares, and they're not gonna like show up in 10 minutes and like throw the guy in a truck. I don't know. So I think we make more of it than what it is. But what thoughts come to mind? I mean, tell me where I'm off.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that as people often do, they probably are taking things to sort of like the moral like extremes to kind of like,
Hmm.
yeah, test the boundaries of like the current policy, you
Hmm.
know. And yeah, I would probably like yeah, I think I agree with you at the very least that the Mormon Land podcast did not have any make any effort to be balanced in their discussion, like
Well,
at
that's kind of their
all.
calling card, but yeah,
And again, yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's like at least I'm not even like putting down like a stake on one side or the other. I'm just saying at least represent like what people like both sides
yeah,
of the issue,
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, because I'm right there with you. Like, I don't, even if ICE did like show up 10 minutes later after you reported them, I'm not going to report anybody. I think that's where the church is at, right? The fact that even with our missionary program, when if a missionary applies, puts his paper in, is going on a mission, they're very intentional where they send him because they don't want to get them into trouble, right? With that where they live and all those things. So to me, and I think that's where most, especially Latter Day Saints, are at, and even someone who maybe leans more right, like I'm like, yeah, I'm not looking to being like, oh, I know that guy, like go get him and go get him. Now the criminals, like if there's a criminal in my church and he's not leaving because he knows the ICE can't come in there, I'll be the first one to drag him out and say, here he is, right? Because
yeah,
who's done maybe a violent crime or a rape or something. Um, but to me, more we're just like, just give us a system that works, right? Like we can't
yeah,
have open borders. I mean, in a perfect world, even in the celestial kingdom, we don't have open borders, right? Like there's boundaries, and those are healthy boundaries. Just give us a system. And I think where people on the more conservative side feel burned is back when Ronald Reagan, he did whatever you call it, comprehensive immigration reform, and just said, all right, we're starting over, but they never closed the border. And so then we're back, and we have the same problem that Reagan tried to fix. So we're just like, and I think that's where the church is dancing is like, hey, let's not put these people, like give them free rent in our home because that is against the law. Of course we're not going to like call anybody ICE on anybody as if they care. And so that's, I think the church is navigating there, but I think in all of our lives we start with the third principle, like, right, like we just want to love you and glad you're here and all that. Anyways, I'm freezing.
that's something that I'm missing from the left is like, what is their sort of like larger sort of like hope? I know that they want illegal immigrants to stay, I guess. But then so it's like, yeah, do they want open borders? And that's probably a pretty easy question for
Yeah.
for somebody for me to ask. And so I
Well, and
have
that's
to
why I look
make a
forward
note
to
of that.
Matt responding because he usually has a contrary opinion to
Yeah,
mine, and which I love having Matt on, and
yeah,
so
totally.
hopefully we'll learn
That's
from him.
I
But
mean
yeah, it seems
that's
like, but going back to like that, like the Salt Lake Tribune, it's like we're not talking about whether we're turning people in or not. Like that is so far outside the framing of what's really going on. You know what I
I
mean?
will
So
say this though. I will say
mhm,
this. One of the interviews on their podcast said that that happened to her. That at least, and I don't know how like real it was. Maybe the guy was just trying to scare her. But she had gone into a restaurant and somebody had said that they called ICE on her or something like that, and then she
uh-huh.
left. And so whether or not like they would actually respond to a report like that, it is very sad to hear something
Yeah.
like that
Yeah, that would be
happen.
heartbreaking. And again, now, but if we had the full story and then suddenly we realize, oh, this guy's actually has a criminal rap sheet, like he's done some
Uh,
terrible things, then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, go to that restaurant and make it happen, right? But yeah,
right.
and again, I'm curious. Maybe I'll try and like, is there a phone number out there? Do I just call ICE and there's like some guy standing by,
Google
like,
it.
hey, where can we go pick up your illegal friend? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems a bit overblown, but anything else? I think this is a fantastic discussion. I think you bring up really that tension that a lot of members of the church are wrestling with. So
Yeah, and I think that, and again, I'm always like hoping for the church to just give some direction, give some doctrinal direction. I don't like these short, like 3 paragraph press releases,
yeah,
like give us something more to work with here. But, hey, we're supposed to follow the spirit too.
yeah,
So I guess that's what they're expecting us to do. So
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's move on. I think we're running out of time
Yeah, you got to pick
here.
up your date here soon, Jeff. So
Um,
your last first date. It's so exciting. So,
um,
anything you want to squeeze in here before you wrap
yeah,
up?
there was one actually that I really liked, and it is this. So apparently, they're doing reenactment walks to the Mississippi River from Nauvoo.
Okay,
Uh,
which isn't very far, right?
yeah, right. Like you can kind of see it,
I mean,
right?
it
Like
is
I
on the
think of that
banks.
picture with the temple in the background, and they're like on boats or something.
Have you been to Nauvoo?
I have, yeah,
Okay,
a
yeah,
while
they
ago
got
though.
I think they call it the Trail of Tears. I know that's another thing as well, but or they call it something where they have the prayers of the people that as they walked out to the Mississippi. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do you know how far it is?
oh, I would guess I don't know 200 feet, 300 feet, maybe I'm selling it short, but I mean it's something me, my family, and young toddlers walk. It's not
What?
like
That close? I feel
to
like it's
Nauvoo.
further
Yep.
because reading this article, they made it sound like it was almost like not like a trek, but some of like the
Mm,
kids were saying, "Oh, like our ancestors were so strong to make this walk." And so it sounded
yeah.
like physically laborious, but
I
I
mean, I
don't know.
guess I didn't walk from the Nauvoo temple to the Mississippi,
To the river.
but
Right.
but yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're referencing a different starting point here, but yeah, it is. I mean, obviously Nauvoo is on the Mississippi River, so I don't know. Maybe
So
I'm misunderstanding it.
So yeah, so this is something I don't know if they do this every year or what, but there was I think there was about 300 people gathered. And what I kind of caught my attention here was that I think they had actual like reenactors of the Nauvoo Legion.
Hmm.
And I thought that was kind of cool. So cuz I grew up in Virginia, and Civil War reenactment is like a huge thing in
Yeah, that's a
Virginia.
big deal. There's guys
One
that get into it.
One time, me and my friends, we went rafting on the Shenandoah River, and like outside Front Royal, and we just found like a random spot to get out of the river that was near, I guess, the town. And so we get out of the river with our tubes, and literally camping on the side of the river just randomly were like a group of Civil War reenactors, and they were like eating like Civil War era food, and they were all dressed up in the
Wow,
costumes and everything.
some serious cosplay there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That is what it is. It's historic cosplay.
Yeah, man.
And anyway, I thought it was cool. I've never met a Nauvoo Legion reenactor, and I hope that this is a thing. And I would love to meet somebody. So if anybody's listening to this podcast that does Nauvoo Legion reenacting,
We
we'd
want
love
to
to.
interview you. Let's do it.
We
Tell
want
us
to.
all about it. Cool.
Um, but anyway, I thought this was like a really cool tradition. I love us remembering things from our past and sort of formalizing it. And um, so yeah, I thought it was really cool. I did
Awesome.
think I did think it was a little similar to like our pageants that we got rid of. You
Yeah.
know, so
It's
it's
a
like,
pageant light, right?
choose one, guys. Like, do we want to like remember our history and culture or not?
Yeah,
So anyway.
that's cool. We'll just quickly mention President Freeman shared the love of Christ in Japan. So, awesome Asian destination that our general leaders are doing. The Boy Scouts officially changed their name to Scouting America, which
Yep.
is kind of interesting to hear. You can read into that. We'll link to that. That's sort of their rebrand after coming out of bankruptcy and all the largest child sex abuse case there. So we wish them well. I kind of miss the old scouting for reasons and also don't miss it
Totally.
for other reasons, but that's a
Yeah.
conversation for another day. And then Sundance celebrates President Camille and Johnson's humanitarian leadership. So a good shout out to our Relief Society there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, with regards to this article, I didn't realize that happened. It was the first I'd heard about it, and I just, I guess, reading this article kind of like made me. It makes Camille Johnson out to be somebody who is really sort of doing, I guess, magnifying her calling,
Love
and
it.
spearheading a lot of um, efforts to help women around the world, women and children around the world. Um, so it said last year, the Church of Jesus Christ expanded its efforts to help women and children under 5 worldwide. Um, the faith, which spends more than 1 billion annually on caring for those in need, gave 55.8 million to help 2.7 million women and more than 12 million children in various countries. And so I guess this is something that maybe she's focusing on more than her predecessors. I don't know. I was curious if you knew anything about that,
No,
but
I think she just happened to be in the chair as it was being honored. I think it was more of an honor for the Relief Society as an organization rather than Camille
oh,
Johnson.
really? So
But I
you
don't know. I
think
could
that
be
she's
wrong.
just okay? Yeah, because
She's
my
done some cool things in her life. I don't want to, shortchange her there. So
well, that's kind of my thought is like, is this a situation where, yeah, she's just sort of like stepping into like autopilot, or is this a situation where she's like, she comes to the calling and she's like, hey, I've got this great idea and this great initiative, and
mhm. Yeah,
moves forward with it.
yeah. Either way, we'll take the good press, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I know Hulu wasn't behind that award. I'll tell you that. So,
Yeah, it is cool to
but
see that at Sundance. It's not typically the place where you would maybe find like praise for a
yeah,
church
yeah.
member.
Um, and I also was referencing. Do you want to highlight some of the charitable things going on? I don't know what sort of time frame you have. You're the one with a hard stop, so
We got probably about 4 or 5 stories.
okay.
Um, from around the world here in the United States and Ohio. The Muskingum Hunger Network received 30,000 pounds of food from the Bishop Storehouse. Thought that
Dang.
was pretty cool. So
Yeah, that's
Muskingum
awesome.
County is just a county in Ohio, and they got 30,000 pounds of food from us. Um, Wheelchairs donated by the church enable independence in Europe. And so this was just an article talking about the church's ongoing ongoing sort of donation efforts for wheelchairs around the world. Apparently, they have contributed over 750,000 wheelchairs since 2001. So yeah, I really want to see kind of like a flow chart of like the church's um charitable efforts, like who came up with this idea to do wheelchairs,
Yeah,
you know
yeah. Why
it's a
wheelchairs
great
and
idea.
not like building a school in Africa or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's a cool effort. Next one is living the gospel of Jesus Christ in the South Pacific in environmentally sustainable ways. So basically, they are building chapels in the South Pacific area that are environmentally sustainable. And if so, for example, I think a lot of these communities don't have great access to water. And the church these very large buildings. I don't know if anybody who's served a mission in a less than first world country will understand what a LDS church looks like in a poor, you know, third world community.
Yeah,
It sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's why everybody thinks we're super, well, we are, I guess, super rich. That's why everybody thinks that the Angel Moroni is made out of gold, because our buildings are really nice in these like little
mm,
communities, right?
yeah.
And apparently, the large roofs of these buildings catch water and provide a clean water supply for some of these
Wow,
communities.
that's cool.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then let's see here. The church funds the renovation of a school in Babaka, Papua New Guinea. And the thing that I liked about this story was that it's just, I think it was just a school renovation in a kind of a poor area, and it wasn't coming from top down. It was some humanitarian missionaries, Wayne and Dina Robbins. They became aware of the problem and found ways to help. And so they found contractors, and then they basically got the church to cover the renovation of this school there. So kind of a cool example of some service missionaries. making a really big difference in their area. And yeah, I think we'll just leave it there. So
Love
that
it.
was
I think
this.
should be a recurring segment where we
Yeah,
just highlight real quickly. It doesn't have to be a
all of
long
that.
segment of this is what the church is doing in the world. Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
We're not just building temples and building chapels, but we're having a difference. It's cool to hear that. So, well, Jeff, thanks for let me hang out with you again. And we encourage people to follow us on all the social medias, especially on YouTube. We're trying to do more and more there. You actually can see the video of us talking on YouTube. So go subscribe on YouTube and, of course, our Patreon. Now, here's the thing. I mean, I'm open to any feedback, but I've tried different things with the Patreon. It just is slowly dying. I mean, I bless your heart for anybody who's been a patron for so long. But it seems like once a week, it notifies me that somebody's canceled their payment, and I'm like, I don't know, there's a lot of time and effort there. But big shout out to our sponsor, which maybe is more the smarter way to go is just so much appreciate Postum who does cover the overhead of what we do here, which doesn't yet include paying our hosts or sending them a box of crumble every once in a while. That would be nice. But
yeah. I was just happy to get a box of Postum.
right, you got it right,
Yeah, yeah, that
and
was great.
I'm sure you're almost out by now, right?
I told all of my friends, I told my family, I was like, I am a legit like influencer podcaster now. I got my Postum.
That's right. And it is a conversation starter. When you pull that out, you have some friends over or whatever, and you're like, if anybody wants any Postum, they're like, oh, I remember Postum, or I love Postum, or my dad drank Postum, or so. Yeah, go check out Postum at your local Smiths or online or whatever. So, and if you're email me and you're really nice, I may just send you your own bottle. So it's delicious, and Tiffany's got all sorts of recipes. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And Jeff, man, good luck on your date tonight. I mean, we'll be praying
Well,
for you, praying for her, and hopefully sparks fly. And we're excited for the update that maybe you'll have a girlfriend next time you record.
I'll give you guys the update next time. Something to look forward to.
Perfect.